So welcome to our webinar today. We're excited to finally have John and Jenny on. They are from Innovia Consulting and will be presenting on an expert guide to production BOMs, Business Central for Manufacturing 101. And before I pass it over to John and Jenny to cover on this topic, I just want to let you know, yes, we are recording it, so it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review and share. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those in the questions box, and we will get them answered during our Q&A time at the end of our session. So now I'm going to pass it on over to John and Jenny, and they're going to kick off our presentation.
So welcome everyone. As Angie stated, John and I will be talking about production bombs. Title of the webinar is an expert guide to production bombs. John and I have been teaching manufacturing 1 and 2 classes through NAV and BC user group community, as well as hosting a class each year at NAVUG Summit Conference during their pre-academy conference training. So we thought we would just take our knowledge of manufacturing and create a webinar series as just an alternate way for you users to learn more about manufacturing and get your questions answered. So just a little bit about ourselves. Again, I'm Jenny Hollingsworth. I'm a senior application consultant here at Innovia. I've been working with Innovia Consulting for about, this year will be 15 years. And I also worked another NAV partner prior to Innovia for about 10 years. So altogether, about 25 years of experience with NAV, and now, of course, Business Central. I'll let John introduce himself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Grant. I'm also a senior application consultant, and have the gray hair to prove it, I guess, more so than Jenny, right? Anyway. Have had a chance to work with NAV BC in particular for the last 10 years. Prior to that, I did work on other ERP manufacturing products, AX being one of them, which has now been rebranded by Microsoft. A little bit of Great Plains, worked on Made to Manage, Sightline, a little bit of SAP. So enough of those products to get really super confused, but having worked with this product, it's a great solution for the mid-market, and hopefully we'll share some ideas on the bill of materials with you.
All right, so today's agenda, we're going to be talking about everything and anything related to the setup of production bombs. So we're going to look at basics, some extra functionality or fields that you might use, different functions you can use on production bombs, and also what reports might be useful. So first, let's go through the basics of a production bomb. So what are the fields required to make a production bomb work?
Okay, you want me to take that one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, my slideshow's not working, by the way, Jenny. So, okay, so let's start off with the production has 2 sections to it. It's got the header, what we call a header. And in the header there's a field called the number. That number customers might think that should be the item number, but it does not have to be. It's just a user-defined number. Most installs, it is the customer bill of material. So it's kind of a one-to-one, but you are able to apply one bill of material to several different items. And you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense. But if you think about it, if I had a 10 items that the only unique thing was the color, you know, some kind of recipe you're making or something, all different colors, your bill of material for that item would be the color plus including the one bill of material that you set up that represent all the common components, and we'll talk about a little later. So that's a good use for that. And then we also have the description, of course, is you fill it in, and the unit of measure allows you to have a unit of measure for this particular bill of material. It does not have to be your inventory unit of measure. A great example of that is we had a customer who wanted 7 decimal points for their components. It was gold and silver, very expensive. And you might think, wow, we need a modification, but we did not. We just simply said this bill of material represents per 100. So in our bill of material, we put per 100 pounds, which gave us 2 more carat decimals, or I'll call it decimals. But then when you create the production order, it does all the math and everything comes up right in the money. So that's the header.
And then, of course, the status field.
Yeah, the status field. Yeah, just the status fields. When you first open it up, it's new, of course, and then you would build it, and it's not officially ready for production until you certify it. And then also, if you've got a bill of material that you're using and you need to do maintenance to it, you have to put it under development, make your changes, and recertify it. And recertifying is updating that low-level code that some of you may be familiar with. But that's what that does. So when you recertify it, it's the system automatically is recalculating that low-level code also, which is used by planning and cost roll-ups.
All right, so that's, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, any questions, please bring it up as we're in an area.
So that's the few basic fields required on the production BOM header. And then we have a couple basics that are always required on the production BOM lines.
Okay, now I'll keep going. Now I'm in the actual, I'm listing my components I'm going to need for this bill of material. In our example, we got tired of a bicycle, so we're making candy M&Ms, and we didn't ask them for permission, so that might be a problem. But anyway, so you have choices. You can select, it's either an item or a production BOM. We'll talk about production BOM at the end of this. So it's an item, the first item there you see, and you just simply fill in the number, pulls in the description, and then the quantity per. So if my recipe is per 1 pound, for instance, or per 100 pounds, I would fill in the quantity per that I need for that unit of measure. And my unit of measure on the item does not have to be inventory's unit of measure. A lot of cases it is, but in this first item, this is in pounds. But let's say the fourth item is in ounces, but my inventory unit of measure might be in gallons. Because I don't want to have to go to inventory and see I have 7,385 ounces. So then I have a inventory guy go or somebody to go count. Hey, let's do a cycle count on this item. Now you're getting into all kinds of all of the math and all this kind of things that you don't want on the floor. So keep in mind your bill of material unit measure can be different than your inventory unit measure, from your purchase unit measure, from your selling unit measure. So all that fits together, and that's a good discussion with your team and inventory, and include your consultant there, because they'll have input into what's the best practice. It used to be you always pick the lowest unit measure on earlier systems, but over the years, and this product does allow you to have different units and measures and not have that be the lowest be the inventory unit measure.
All right, so those are just the basics, right? Pretty simple to set up the basics for a production BOM. But now let's get into the extras. Let's look at fields on the production BOM that are optional, but could be extremely useful to use in manufacturing. So the first one John's going to discuss is the routing link code.
Okay, so this is the same bill of material that we just saw, but there's additional fields and functionality that might be a good fit for what you're doing. Part of what companies do and are looking to do is, I'll call it some of the lean principles, where you an activity that we do over and over and over, and do we really need to have a manual way to do that? Now, I'm going to say, like, consuming material. If I'm mixing a recipe of M&Ms here, I've got all my ingredients, maybe it's for a 100-pound batch. Do I really need to go in and manually issue every one of those items? Or do I take advantage of consuming those as I produce output?
And just
so
a
in
plug,
this-
we're
yeah,
going to
go
have a future class on how, or a webinar on how auto consumption works. So just a plug for that class. You'll see that at the end.
So by using a routing link code, which is kind of an interesting name, I've seen count points on other software and some other things, it allows us to attach material to components. Now in this case, we attach it to the last operation, but you could actually have a flat bill of material that, say it has 75 items on or 50 items, and these 10 items go to operation 20, these 5 items go to operation 30. Now your process has to support that, but that allows you to basically, if you're doing any kind of warehousing and you create a production pick, it would actually deliver the material to the right work center in that example that I just described. So kind of a flat bill of material, flat routing, where you kind of link all those together. So that is, think of the routing link code as the link that I can attach material to an operation. That also works with the date I need it. If your company happens to be running longer production orders, and operation 30 doesn't happen until 3 days into the process, and I've got 3 items that are linked to that operation, I can link it there in the planning. When I run planning, it knows that I don't need that material until 3 days into the operation, or a week into it if I have a 2-week running production order. So it also plays with your planning. When you get into planning, how does that all come together? But routing link code is a really nice feature to allow you to trigger where do I move material when, what's my due dates that I need, and also part of the auto consumption that we'll discuss in a later session. It's a good feature.
All
Okay.
right, the next feature, lead time offset.
Okay. So another field that may or may not be used by your company is something called a lead time offset. A great example is this. I'm running purchasing. I'm the purchase planner. I want to get all my material in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days before the production order is scheduled to run. So if it's supposed to start on let's say March 28th or something, I want to make sure all my material is here by March 25th, for instance. An easy way to do that is to use what's called a lead time offset on those items. It's maybe not every item. It's maybe, in our example, we've got 2 items that we really want to get in here. Maybe we have some QC work to do on it before it hits production. So we're telling it, if the due date is 3/28, the date for planning will be, the due is 3/26. Make sense? Where you
so John,
material
that's not the vendor's lead time, of course, because
No.
if it's 3/26, then on top of it you have the vendor's lead time.
vendor lead time, inbound handling warehouse time, those kind of things. This is just a separate field on the bill that you might have a couple items that you control, and if we don't have those, I got to reschedule a production order, for instance. Might be critical items, and I want to monitor them as a purchasing. Otherwise, the due date is always going to be the start date of the production order. Now, there's ways to offset that date. You can use safety lead time, some other things. We'll talk about that in another session. But out of the box, I do have customers use this. Simple one I had was they made wire harnesses. So the production bill of material was a wire harness, but they had to cut the wire, right? So they had a wire on here, and that would produce another production order. And they wanted that to be done at minimum the week before, because they schedule in weekly buckets. So we put 7D on there, and now when that planning ran, it said, oh, okay, we got to cut that wire 7 days before the start date of the main production order.
One thing I want to mention too, sometimes in Nav or Business Central, the field isn't even showing. And I feel like this is one of them. You need a developer in your company or your partner to expose that field onto the page. Maybe in the latest version they have that showing now, but yeah, it's one that was always hidden and people didn't know about.
Yeah, I've seen that more with the lot size, I think. But yeah,
Okay.
same thing, right? So that's a lead time offset. You may not be useful for you, but it's available in certain situations.
Another field that you can or cannot use, doesn't matter, it's optional, is the scrap percentage. So on the component lines, you can add in additional scrap percentage per component. So in our example here, on the wrapper, we're adding an additional 0.1% scrap to be figured in when we create our production orders. So when we are planning or purchasing this component, it's going to look at the quantity per plus add in the scrap percentage for the quantity we're producing. And that's our quantity required. And just like on the routing link code, we talked about automatic consumption of components. This scrap percentage would also be considered in the quantity required when it automatically consumes components if you have selected that feature.
Add one more thought to that too. I don't know how many of you out there are standard costers. It will use that percentage in the standard cost roll up. That'd be a trivia question, but I'll just let you have that one.
Okay.
Is it used or not? There you go.
What about the calculation formula, John?
Okay. So again, we're trying to show you some of the fields that are may or may not fit your business, but just so you're aware of them. Calculation formula. BC does have, NavBC does have ability to do some calculations. And you might ask, why would I need that? So in this example, we'll go through the example first and talk about it. So we've got a wrapper, a RM 1800. It's wrapper material. We might buy it in square feet, big rolls, but we actually cut it during the process. So in here we've said, well, length times width. So it's 6 inches by 4 in our example here, square inches. And well, yeah. And I'm going to flip to maybe a better example that might make sense to you. Is I have a raw material that is a 4x8 sheet of something, and I'm cutting material out of it, or I've got bar stock that is a 20-foot length, but I need a certain size cut out of that, but I don't want to have an item number for it. So you can list the what I call the raw material here and call out the size you need, and it will calculate how much material it's going to need of that product when I create my production order. This one is a little bit out of the box. Where does it fit? But I have had customers use this when they don't want to have the part numbers for every cut size, for instance, where it might just be that you don't stock those cut sizes, but yet you're forced to have an item number if you don't have a way to calculate that. Does that make sense?
John, this is Gary.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you do that, does it automatically calculate your cost of that raw material?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And maybe it's a 4x8 sheet, and I'm cutting something
2 by
that
2
fits
out of it. Yeah.
Logical. I've got a 2x2 piece. I need a 4x4 piece. I need an 8x8 piece. I could have 3 different item numbers, and then the almost like a bill of material that is made out of a 4x8 sheet. Or I could have a 4x8 sheet, use the calculation, and not have those 3 item numbers. Just stay with the raw material. Okay. It doesn't fit for all applications, but again, when you look at how you're doing things, it's trying to cut down on those. All that, like I could have a 75 different item numbers that are cut sizes, and really, do I need those or not is the question. If I could tell the system what size to cut, and then it's, once it's cut, it's welded or whatever, it moves on. I don't really need 75 individual item numbers,
Right.
but doesn't fit everything, but it's available. And it can be length times width times the depth, so you can do a three-dimensional item. So anyway, that's a calculation. It's in there. Those few columns might be hidden, but I think you can just add them if you were going to go in a test company and play around, if you thought in your application it might work.
This is the other Gary.
Only one Gary. No, sorry.
So when you're doing this, let's say that your 4x8 sheet, your unit of measure, your item unit of measure is sheet.
Mhm.
And so you're cutting these three pieces out that you were talking about a minute ago. Or let's say that you use half of a sheet. How is your item inventory adjusted if the unit of measure is sheet? Now I've got half a sheet left. Is that, and how is scrap? Is all of that automatic in
It can
the
be.
scenario you just described?
Yeah, you have to decide, and this is one of those where sheet, I would recommend you have, I don't know, maybe 3 decimal positions on the inventory. So if I went and looked at my on hand, I might have well, in your example, 1.5 sheets.
Okay.
But you do get into the cutoff puzzle.
Mhm.
I think I saw a poster, and I've seen 2 ways to tackle that. One is, you know, you definitely have decimals of what's on hand, but obviously you have to be on top of that, and the purchasing person on top of that. But how do you store cutoffs and all that is the other thing that sometimes we get involved with. And you know, I've seen it as simple as a rack with 6 different slots, and the operator, if it's 2 by 2 or less, it goes in this slot. If it's 3 by 3 or more, it goes in this slot. And they have the operator can pull a piece from one of those slots. You're not actually tracking every size for the cutoff, but in the system I have 1.75 sheets, and it's a full sheet plus 3 cutoffs, for instance. That's one way I've seen it done without getting too carried away with trying to track all your cutoffs. But if we get back to this, my unit of measure can be square inches, but my sheet could be square feet, and it would doesn't guarantee you that if I have so many, like, let's say 288 square feet, that I actually have 2 full sheets out there. So there's still those kind of raw materials are monitored quite closely when you have cutoffs all the time. And if you got a nesting, I don't know, a lot of times when you're doing, you got nesting going on, and you got, the software on the nesting machine is determining what to cut, and you got that whole puzzle. But what nav out of the box BC has is, I wouldn't need a part number for a cut size if it's a reasonable, like 4x4 size. I wouldn't need to have a part number for that. I could still have it on the bill. I could call out the raw material. I could tell it the size. It'll calculate, and it will tell me what I need.
Okay, excellent. Can I ask one more question on that?
Sure.
So let's say that you had using your 4x8. Let's say you used 2x6. You're cutting it, and you don't have anything that could use a cutoff at 2x2, which is left. Okay.
Right.
So in that type of a context, how do you indicate to the system that? So is that considered scrap for this item then?
Well, yeah, to me, that's just because that job happened to be the last one, do you want to charge scrap to that job, right? You might, if it was the first job, you wouldn't have scrap. That's the kind of question. And sometimes those type of inventory adjustments are done because you're on top of this product, and you're just weekly making adjustments to take care of inventory.
Fair enough. I don't want to run us down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah, sometimes those adjustments are just thrown into cost of goods sold and not applied to production order kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sure.
All right. Let's move on to the next fields. There's the position fields.
The exciting position field.
Yeah. I'll let John talk about how exciting they are.
So you have 3, all user defined. I think they're all 10 long. Just pretty much you can put in there what you want. How I've seen them used, like this example was, I have a recipe. What order do I add the ingredients in? A lot of times this isn't really good enough. You know, you have a work instructions that helps the operator do that kind of thing. Another way I've seen that used is I provide let's pick on our bicycle. If we had a bicycle here, when you buy the bicycle, you get a diagram. You know, you'll diagram, or maybe some of your kids' toys at Christmas, and it's got, oh, circle 1 is this piece, circle 2 is this piece. You could apply that to your bill of material if you're in that kind of business where you need to provide a drawing, and I think the term is bubble number on the drawing that matches your bill of material. So it's just they're there. I don't know why there's 3 of them, but we got 3 of them, and it's really user defined. And a lot of times it's when you get a possibly printout on the shop floor, the paperwork, it does something based on that column. Or like I said, it's just informational. That's how I've seen that used. Pretty exciting, right? I don't know if anybody out there is using it for something creative, let us know. But it's without a mod, you can add some pieces of information to your bill.
All right. A couple more fields that are available on the component lines of the BOM are starting and ending dates. So basically these are effective dates. So in our example here, we have the wrapper. We have one wrapper, item number RM1800, that is effective 1/1/2020 to 3/31/2020. But starting in April, we have a new design on our wrapper. So we want to make sure we're using our new part number. So right in the production BOM lines, we can specify both part numbers with a starting and ending date for effective dates for those parts. Later on, we'll show a screenshot of it, but this is then used in a batch job called delete expired components. So there's a function that will actually allow you to go through and delete all the existing expired components from production BOM lines. So this is one way you can manage effective dates of raw materials on production BOMs.
Yeah, I'll throw one more thing in there, Jane. So what's the question we always get asked? I'll answer it.
He's testing me. I don't remember.
I want the other one to kick in when I'm out of stock on the first one. You know, I want the new part to replace it when I don't have any more inventory. It doesn't do that out of the box. That's the question we'll get asked. Well, yeah, I'm replacing it, but let's use up the old stock first. So that's, doesn't do that. There's not a setup to do that.
All right. Phantom BOMs. I'll let John kind of explain phantom BOMs and how you would use those, and then I'll kind of go through and explain this example.
Okay, sure, Jenny. Okay, so as we saw, the type can be an item or a phantom. Simple application is I have a bill of material, and when I get a certain point, I have a phantom. In this example, we have a carton and a label that is applied to several different products, the same size carton and maybe same generic label that prints the, I don't know, maybe it's a license plate or not a license plate. It might just be a food label or some darn thing. And what you can do then is have a bill of material for the recipe, I'll call it, with all the items, and then call it a production BOM is what it's called, and it calls out packaging, and then I have a bill of material that's sitting by itself called packaging, which has those 2 items. When I create the production order, it's going to pull those 2 items in and get rid of the quote unquote the phantom item. So when I looked at my production order, I would just see all the items and then 2 more items listed. when I was earlier on, when I said we have a customer that does color, they produce the same item, 10 different colors or more. You could use phantoms for that. Now, the phantom BOM in that case would be the real bill of material, because my only item on my finished good is the color, some kind of color for the recipe. And then the phantom is the 10 item bill of material. So it's kind of just the opposite. So we get asked, well, how do you do colors? And yes, colors and a couple things can be unique for an item, but maybe 70% of it is the same in the body. You can use phantom BOMs, and that application works really well. Everything uses it, the cost roll-ups. It works well in the right application, and that saves you on maintenance. So for instance, if I had, we're switching out the carton, I could go in and do that effective date that we just went through and say on April 1st, this carton is going into place, and that could impact 25 items, bill of materials, where I don't have to go to 25 bill of materials and do some kind of maintenance. So in the right application, it can save the maintenance, the time to update your bill of materials. So don't forget about phantoms. It does have a potential to help you simplify your bills.
Question on that?
Sure.
So you use the example of packaging. Would you call it a best practice to always put packaging in a phantom so that you can swap cartons and all that kind of thing without having to change all your BOMs?
I would, because if that packaging can be used on several different finished items, the banding, I don't know, whatever, that would be a good example for it. Because and if something got updated, I update the packaging BOM, and tomorrow's production orders, whatever use it, are correct.
It just really simplifies the maintenance of maintaining those items on production BOM lines, especially if they're on multiple BOMs.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we went through the basics, extra optional fields that you can use on the production BOM. And then now let's look at some of the functions that are available that will help us with maintenance and then analysis of the BOMs.
I had one comment I forgot to say is, I'm like Columbo, I have one more thing. No, the bill of material, when you create a bill of material, you can use that on several different items. BC Nav does not force you to have a bill of material per item. That's easier said than done, but just think of that. A combination with phantoms might be how that all fits together when you start looking at your bill of material. A lot of systems will force you to have a separate bill for each item.
All right. Okay, so let's look at some of the functions available to help us on BOMs. First, we're just going to go through, I'm going to review a few of the slides of the functions to kind of explain what they are, and then we'll go into Business Central and do a few quick demonstrations of how they work. That way we're not really flipping back and forth for you guys. So let's just do a little explanation first, and then we'll do a few quick demonstrations. So I'll let John first talk about versions and alternate BOMs and why you might or might not use them.
Okay, we often get asked if you're in a engineering change ECN type environment, what does a BC have to help us with that? And in the right situation, versions are good. So what that allows us to do is to have start with a bill of material version 1. And if it's an item that has an engineering change on it, you can copy the version 1 and make version 2, and I think Jenny will show us that. And then you've got, that's active. Let's say April 1, we're changing to this, we're tweaking it just a little bit. versus the start and end date that we showed earlier. This would be versions of a bill of material. So we can do that. And then there also is well, can you compare version 1 to version 5? What was different, or 1 and 2? I think the more complicated thing is when the customer orders, to make sure order entry knows what version they want. Because sometimes that gets a little bit hairy. We worked with automotive supplier. They made of all things, the keys for cars. Maybe that's obsolete by now. No, they're still keys. But so they had to save lots of versions, they'll say. But they had inventory. They had on-hand inventory of those versions. So when you do that, and you have to manage that, and customers are ordering older versions, that flips more to, yes, maybe we need an item number for that version, and we handle it that way because we have on-hand inventory. And we may even make more for production, so we got to push the right bill of material and route to production to create some more of these older versions. But so it becomes, in your process, are versions something that you need to maintain inventory? If you don't, then this would, this is pretty straightforward and easy to create a version, make the change, when's it's effective. Next time production runs on April 1st, it would pick up the new bill of material.
A couple of the different fields right on the production BOM header is version numbers. You can set up a number series for your versions. That is optional. We see a lot of people really just use their BOM number with a dash, whatever, for the version number that they're on. So they do it manually, but there is a number series, so that's an option. And then also John mentioned it a minute ago here, but we do have, it displays an active version on your production BOM. So using the starting and ending dates of the versions, it'll show the active version. If a version is not active, it'll be blank, and your normal production BOM would be the active version. So when you're creating and planning on and creating those production orders, using the dates, it will populate the correct production BOM and production BOM version on your production orders. And we'll show a little of that right inside of BC. Copy BOMs, it's another simple function. Versions uses the copy BOM function as well, but it just gives us the ability to create a new production BOM and easily copy all the component lines from one production BOM to another, modify them from there, and then certify them. So that's a pretty easy but helpful function. We have a function in BC to exchange production BOM items. So it's a mass update to find and replace components on production BOM lines. In the screenshot here, I am replacing, you wouldn't know this, but I know that RM1000 is sugar. So I am replacing sugar with RM1050, which is, I think that's my monk fruit in the raw, because we're making things more healthy. So we can easily use this function to go through all production BOM lines that have sugar and replace it with the monk fruit. We can give it the multiple the quantity multiple should be. In this case, it's a 1-to-1 relationship. The starting date, we can choose whether to recertify it. And if we are exchanging components, we can also choose to delete the exchange component as well. So this is another easy way to go through and quickly modify components on BOM lines. All right, another function is delete expired components. The last function we talked about and this one can both be found on the production BOM list. So your production BOM list on the action ribbon, whether you're using NAV or BC, you'll see that under the process button. So with deleting expired components, again, early on, we showed you where you could enter starting and ending dates. This is just a mass update to delete all those expired components so we no longer have to see those on our BOMs.
Quick question on that. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that filter, can you filter that in any way, or is it an all or nothing approach? Like maybe I want to keep around just a couple that are some specific situation.
The only filters it allows for are any of the fields on the production BOM header. So you could filter in or out production BOM numbers.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We also have where used features. I have two examples here. We'll show them within the software itself, but on the top picture, the M&M's Chocolate Finished Good 1000, you can go to the production BOM action ribbon and go to where used, and it will tell you where that BOM is used throughout all the items in the system. And then, of course, if we go down to the component lines, you'll see I'm highlighted on sugar. I want to find all of the production BOMs where sugar is used. So we can get the component where used list right here as well. And those are just on-screen views of where either the production BOM or the component is used. All right. So let's flip over to Business Central and we'll show a demonstration of how to create versions, copy the BOM, and then look at that where used as well, because sometimes it's a little easier to look at within the software. All right. And if, John, could you just tell me if you see Business Central?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. All right, so I think the first thing we're going to do is look at BOM versions. So I'm going to go to my production BOMs, and I'm going to go to my main chocolate M&Ms. I'm going to open that production BOM, and we're going to create a new version. All right, so on the ribbon under the production BOM action, I'm going to go to versions and click new. I'm going to, again, a version code can be a number series, but I'm going to manually enter my version number. And this is going to be, we're going to make our M&Ms healthier, like I stated before, and we're going to use monk fruit instead of sugar. And this change is going to start on, we'll say May 1st. All right. To easily create my new BOM, I'm going to use that copy BOM function. So I'm going to click on more options and go to my functions, copy BOM. All right. So it fills in my BOM for me, and I can go ahead and I'm going to add my monk fruit. And it's going to be a 1-to-1. I'm going to make sure the routing link code's associated. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and delete my sugar line. Click the button. I'm going to click delete line. All right. In order for the version to become active and used, just like a regular production BOM, we're going to mark it certified. And I'm going to go back to my production BOM card. All right, you'll notice that my active version is still my -1, which changed milk from whole milk to non-fat milk. This will not change to the -2 until I hit May 1st. If I go to production BOM matrix by version, this is a nice window that shows us the differences between our production BOM and all of our versions out there. So in this instance here, you can see my finished good, my first version. That one has sugar, but we removed the whole milk and we added non-fat milk. My version 2, we removed the sugar, we added the monk fruit. And in this instance, it looks like we want no milk. I must have accidentally deleted that line. So it's a real nice kind of matrix or view of our production BOM to all of our versions to see what's different.
Oh, I'll add one thing to that. If you close this guy, Jenny, if you notice that the front screen shows you basically your original bill of material, and that's deceptive because some people, they'll come in here and make a change and not realize, oh, I didn't really change it on a version. So one option some customers do is they create a version right away, then this screen would be blank. So I got version 1. If you notice when you went to copy, you can say which version to copy to create my new version also. So just something to be aware of, that this screen could be deceptive if, like right now, we don't have those changes showing, but I could still change this. So
right, because it doesn't pull up the active version.
The latest
you have to
version.
Go to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you first, if you're going to use versions, and not, you don't have to. Again, you can use start and end dates in the bill of material to start with. It depends on your process for documentation and your standards, but you can start off with, here's my bill of material, and I'm going to create a version right out of the box, and then this screen would be blank, and I have to go to the versions to see what the bill looks like. Because we don't like customization. So.
All right. All right, I'm going to go back to my production BOM list, and we can look at the copy BOM function. I know you saw it a little bit in how you can copy a BOM into versions, but I'll just show it from here as well. It doesn't take too long. We're now starting to make M&Ms in the peanut butter version. So I do want to take the M&M chocolate version and just modify it. So I can go to functions, copy BOM. It'll pull up my BOM list, ask me which one I want to copy. I'm going to choose my first one here, click OK, and it will populate my BOM lines. So then from here, I can just make my modifications and then certify my brand new peanut butter M&Ms. So again, copy BOM is pretty easy to use. The where used list as well, we talked about that a little bit. If I go to my M&Ms, my finished good for the chocolate M&Ms, if I'm on the header ribbon and go to production BOM, here I can look at where used. This is going to show me where this particular production BOM is used. Okay, so it's, you know, we just have this one BOM and it's used in another production BOM version. So this particular production BOM is not used for multiple items. If we go to the line, for example, the sugar line, go to component, where used. Here it'll bring up all of the different part numbers that use the sugar. So here you can see we have 3 different part numbers that use sugar and what the quantity needed for each is. Looks like the Lifesavers have a lot of sugar in them.
I'll add to that. It's actually looking at bill of materials assigned to items for product, you know, that are active. And how does that differ? We have one customer who has several different bill of materials for the same item, but it's based on batch size. So they have let's say a 50-pound batch, 100-pound batch, 500-pound, and 1,000. So they have 4 bill of materials for the same item, but it's a batch size because they mix. And when they run production, they select which batch size they want to run. And if you run the where used on a component, it wouldn't see the 50, all 4 of those batch sizes. It will only see the one that's assigned to the item where you assign the bill of material. Small thing, but was something that we had to have a process. Okay, what do we do then to solve that problem?
All right. So if we go back to our PowerPoint, the last thing we'll talk about here is the reports. Are there any useful reports that we can use when building or creating production BOMs? There's just a couple that we thought about. One was the where, again, you can see the where used list on the screen, but you can also see the where used list in a report as well. So again, it will show where and in what quantities this item is used. So this can be in report format. And then one of John's favorite reports.
Yeah, I'll talk to this for a second. I don't know if any of you have heard the term planning bill of material. We hear that once in a while where a company has a planning bill of material, and we can do that in BC, meaning we create a bill of material. It's really not attached to any item. It might be, here's what I plan on production in 3 weeks. And on that bill of material are the finished items that you plan on making, right? 100 of these, 55 of these, 75 of these. And then you can use this report to explode and summarize all the components. It's almost like MRP planning, sort of, kind of, but it allows you to have a planning bill of material if your process, if that's the kind of thing you do. We could do that. So this report would allow us to do it. We create a new bill of material. We call it, April 7th planning. We load in, here's what we think we're going to run. We run this report to get the, what I'll call the rough cut total of quantity that we might need. And also this is another way to just look at a normal bill of material, to take a look at, just requirements, more of a planning, looking at, it goes down all the levels. If you notice, there's 1, 2, 3 levels showing. That's my trivia question. How many levels does BC support? NAV BC, anybody? How many levels can we go deep? Well, if you've had this error, every once in a while we get a customer who, we get an error that says usually exceeded 50 levels. So 50 levels is the maximum, and as if you go beyond, I don't know, 3 or 4, that's of interest. We should probably talk. But anyway, the other thing that it does do is, if it goes to 50, typically you probably have a circular bill of material. In other words, you've created a bill, you've attached to the item, but the item is also in the bill. That gets confused. But there are situations where you need to rework a finished item. So you would consume it and re-output it. And you have to do that on the production order bill of material, not a standard bill of material, for those of you running production. That does allow you to do that. So that's the quantity explosion. Can help you with planning.
All right. I know we've answered a few questions throughout the presentation, but just wanted to give people a chance if there were any other questions related to production BOMs.
I have a question.
Robin
Sure.
doesn't get any questions.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I have a finished good that has a BOM that's attached to it, and it has to do with the routing and the lead time offset.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a cord lock assembly that I have to produce before I produce my garment, so that I have them ready to go to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So would I put that lead time offset in my assembly?
Yes, because
That
then when that plans that assembly, it's going to be scheduled. The due date is 5 days before the start date, for instance, of where you need it.
that I need it in the main BOM.
Correct. That's exactly what the one customer did with wire. They had a wire harness and they wanted the wire cut at least 1 week before the scheduled run. So they put 7 days in their offset. And when the production order got planned to actually cut the wire, it was due a week before the start of the wire harness. So that's what you're kind of describing.
Okay.
Right.
So I can update that tomorrow.
Right. Rather than saying the
And then
due
the
date
other-
is the start date of the production order, it's due, and you'll see that as soon as you create the production order, you'll see the due date of that assembly is due 5 days before the other due dates of the other components. You'll see that on the bill of material.
All right. And then, as you know, we're a huge user of the versions of BOMs.
Mhm.
But we are very good at not meeting our due dates. And this is where I've pointed out to several people that my sales order has a date in the past, but my BOM has been updated 4 times. So when I go to release the production order, it's picking the BOM for the due date that's on the sales order and not the current BOM that I'm currently running at. And I've run into a couple problems with that already.
Mhm. Yeah, that gets out to the shop floor and nobody catches it. You're making, you're scrambling to fix whatever.
Yeah, because it's pulling a zipper that I no longer have, and that one's been replaced, and
Yeah,
you're
right.
Issue the markers, and now I have entries, and I can't change things, and so I don't know if there's another way of doing that.
Part of it is when the people that are adding the new bill of material and the new version, they really need to be running that item availability by event to understand what production orders are on the floor and what sales orders are out there, because that'll show you all the due dates. And that to me would be, I got some action to do, because I might change my effective date on my version based on what's in the system already, or I have to start, talking to sales. I want you to use this new version, so your due date has to be equal to or greater than my date. So you kind of got to work together. But if they would run that item availability on the components that use that bill of material or the items, there's no magic like, oh, okay, well, it's going to automatically update sales order due dates, for instance, or the shipment date, I guess, it's choosing. Yeah, it's more of a process, but you do have some tools to help the person doing it, and that item availability by event gives you a great view of everything in the system when you need to make sure the dates are good.
Yeah.
And you check, you print that out too, if you needed to, and throw it in an email, lets people know.
I also watched the dating game the other day and realized that we're probably using our date fields incorrectly too. So
yeah, there's 2 things I usually with these systems. They like accurate inventory and accurate dates, and the dates a lot of times get ignored, and that causes problems.
So when we first went into 2016, there was like 3 different dates, and nobody understood the dates or what the dates were for. And so we just picked 2 of them, and that's what we use. And now I'm finding out how the dates are used and figuring out we're not doing them correctly.
Yeah, and those calendars come into play too, Robin, which a lot of, it's good to just, maybe with everything going on right now, it's good to just look at some of your data, and the dates are critical to.
Right. We
if nothing else, provide education to everybody. Yeah, because it got kind of put on the side burner, and it really is critical when you're trying to do planning. And
right.
Yeah, you're right on with that.
All right.
We can help you with that.
I learned some. Yeah, I know. Believe me, I'm trying. So at least I learned one thing. I'm gonna fix one thing tomorrow.
Well, that's our goal. One thing.
Yep. One more thing off the list.
We're trying to not forget one thing that we should be. So.
Yeah.
All right. If you have any other questions, John Grant, here's his information. If you want to contact him via email or phone, so that, take down that information. Also, this is just number one of a whole manufacturing webinar series we're doing. So this is just our future dates and the different things we'll be talking about regarding manufacturing. So please sign up for those if you want further information. And of course, if you go to innovia.com/events, all of our upcoming events are located on that website, including the next manufacturing series webinars.
All right. Well, thank you, John and Jenny, and to everyone on our meeting today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the patience with the technical mishap. So we look forward to seeing you on another webinar. So just to let you know, next Tuesday we have Equisys presenting on document and expense management. Doesn't have to be a hassle. And then next Wednesday, ProCat will be presenting on need more productivity, increase your picking accuracy. So sign up for our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. And we also have a podcast that is called the Innovia Conversation. And we just want to encourage you to listen to our selection that Steve and Jeff have provided to us over the past year. And they do about 2 episodes a month. And you can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page. And that's innovia.com/podcast. So check out those selections and subscribe so you'll be notified when those new episodes air. And our annual customer conference is still scheduled as planned. If there is any new developments in the coming weeks, we will certainly update our site and let everyone know. But contact your rep or visit our conference page where we have all the details for our conference. And that website is innovia.com/conferences. This is a free event for our customers to attend, and we would love to have you. So register now so you don't miss out on this great event. All right, well, we thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on another Innovia webinar.